A eunuch's just delivered the news. You've been selected tonight for bed service. And your mind does that thing that it always does. It just goes quiet. Because this isn't new. Every night it's the same ritual. You're stripped, washed, wrapped in a sheet, and carried to the emperor's door. When you reach the threshold, the sheet's taken away and you walk in with nothing. No clothing, no hairpins, no nail guards. Nothing on your body that could be concealed. And more importantly, nothing that could be used as a weapon. Most people recognize that scene. You've probably seen it in dramas, but almost no one explains why it began in the first place. That ritual didn't come from tradition. It came from fear. From one specific night in 1542, when 16 palace maids tried to strangle the Emperor of China in his sleep. And they nearly succeeded. But when you hear what that palace actually was, what was happening inside of it, you won't be asking why they tried. You'll be asking why it took them so long. Welcome back to The Rose's Past. I'm Rose, and today we're going back to the Renyin Palace Coup of 1542. But to understand that night, to really understand it, you can't start there. You have to start so much earlier, with what that palace actually looked like before it became what it was. The Jiajing Emperor came to power in 1521. He was 15 years old, and he hadn't been raised to rule. He was a cousin, a compromise brought in after the previous emperor had died without an heir. And that mattered more than anyone in the court openly cared to admit. The factions were already formed, the loyalties were already set, and he was an outsider walking into the middle of a system that had been running without him. Now watch a young ruler who knows he wasn't supposed to be there, and you'll see a particular kind of ambition arise. Not the confident kind, the proving kind. The kind that can't stop, because stopping means admitting that you don't belong. And for the first decade or so, that ambition expressed itself in ways that were, by the standard of the Ming court, relatively unremarkable. He was drawn to Taoism, to ritual, to the idea that the natural world contained forces that could be understood and harnessed. And that wasn't unusual for an emperor of the period, so the court tolerated it. But here's a detail from those early years that matters more than it might seem. When Lady Chen was selected as his first empress, she was married to him at 13 years old. The court's primary concern was an heir. The Ming Dynasty had nearly collapsed for want of one, so this wasn't an abstract political concern. It was real and solidified, and for 6 years, nothing came. The pressure in that palace had a texture to it. You felt it in the rituals being performed, in which Taoist masters were summoned, and in which prayers were offered when and why. And then sometime around 1528, a particular fertility ritual seemed to produce results. Lady Chen fell pregnant. And that's when things start to go very, very wrong. The pregnancy changed Jiajing, or rather, it revealed something that had always truly been there underneath. Because when Lady Chen, visibly pregnant with the heir the entire court had been waiting for, reacted with anger to watching her husband openly flirting with another woman, when she shattered a teacup in protest, his anger couldn't be stopped. He attacked her. He kicked her repeatedly in the abdomen. She ended up hemorrhaging and losing the pregnancy right there on the floor. And as she laid there bleeding, she asked the emperor to see her father one last time. And he refused. Then he denied her burial in the Imperial Mausoleum and ordered the simplest possible funeral. Every type of humiliation that he could afford to give her, he did, right to the very end. The woman from the teacup incident, the one he'd been openly flirting with, was a lady named Lady Zhang. She was promoted after Lady Qian's death, becoming his second empress. Now, she had watched in person what had happened to her predecessor. She understood her position with clarity, and the records suggest that she was almost cold in how she dealt with it. She was careful in her words, measured in her reactions, and she learned to read his moods in a way that you would learn to read the weather, not for pleasure but for survival. And for several years, she managed to do this. It tells you that she wasn't naive. She wasn't young and untested. She'd seen this man at his worst, and she adapted her behavior accordingly. Then in 1534, she made her first and last mistake. She spoke in favor of a minister that the emperor disliked, someone she may have genuinely believed could help stabilize the court. But it didn't matter. He deposed her on the spot. He stripped her titles, her household, and her staff. He had her whipped, and then he had her sent to the Cold Palace, an unheated, neglected wing of the Forbidden City, where women the court wanted to forget were left to disappear. She would die there 2 years later from depression and the cold, in rooms that had not been properly maintained for years. There was no formal mourning period for her, no posthumous honors. She had ceased to exist in any meaningful sense. Now his third empress was a lady named Lady Feng. She had entered the palace in 1530 and was appointed empress in 1534 after Lady Zhang's removal. And here's a detail that will change everything about how you read her later in this story. When she was selected as empress, appointed to the highest position a woman in the Ming Dynasty could hold, she was 15 years old. And Jiajing had already decided that she was too old. Now just sit with that for a second. She wasn't too old to govern, and she wasn't too old to manage an empire. But she was too old for what he actually wanted her for. Because by 1530, something had shifted inside of the Jiajing Emperor. The fertility rituals, the Taoist practices, these had all been evolving for years, folding into one another and feeding a belief that was growing more specific and more consuming day by day. And at the center of it was a substance that his Taoist advisors had assured him could unlock what no other emperor in history had ever managed to achieve: immortality. They called it red lead, hongqin, and what it required, what the formula actually called for, was the menstrual blood of virgins, specifically the first cycle, the very first one. It was considered the purest, the most potent. Later cycles could still be used, but they were regarded as diminished in value, less useful to the overall goal. And this is where the palace begins to transform into something else entirely. Producing red lead in sufficient quantity required a constant supply of girls at the precise moment of their first period, which required a constant supply of girls who hadn't even reached it yet. Girls aged 13 and 14 were brought into the palace specifically for this purpose, and to ensure the purity of what was being taken from their bodies, to keep them in what his advisors called an ideal state. They were put on a restricted diet: mulberry leaves and morning dew collected from the surface of those same leaves. That's the diet of a silkworm. They ate and drank nothing else, and if a girl became ill from the malnutrition, from the cold, from the conditions inside of those palace walls, she was expelled or beaten. And the records don't always distinguish between those two outcomes because, in the practical sense, the distinction barely mattered at all. We know some of what happened to the girls who couldn't endure it because of an unlikely source. The Joseon Annals, Korean court documents compiled by diplomats and envoys who moved throughout the same circles and wrote down what they had saw from the outside. Those records state that the deaths from punishments inside of the palace reached more than 200 people across his reign, that over 50 of his roughly 76 consorts died unnaturally. That's 200 lives behind closed doors in a place where no one outside could see and no one inside could speak. We'll come back to what happened to the ages of the girls he imported. But first, we need to know who these 16 women actually were, because the official record does what official records usually do. It gives you the names and the verdicts, their labels, and the labels are the least interesting part about all of this. A woman named Wang Ningping is the one the court named as the principal instigator in this incident. She was the ringleader, the woman who, when interrogated, was confirmed as the one who had set this plan in motion. But consider what that verdict actually rests on. These women were interrogated under torture, in a court where the emperor had just survived an assassination attempt, and where the pressure to produce not only a confession, but a hierarchy, a chain of command, a satisfying narrative of the conspiracy, would have been immense. Wang Ningping was a senior among the palace maids, and that seniority may have made her the obvious candidate for the role the interrogators needed to fill. Some historians have noted that she may simply have been the one who spoke first when somebody needed to name a leader. Another woman who's pretty influential in this entire case is named Jiang Jinlian. She's the one who ran. In the middle of the attack, while the others held the emperor's arms and legs, while the cord was around his neck, she broke away from the group and went directly to Empress Feng. She told the Empress what was happening, and the Empress came and the maids were captured. Now, why do you think she would do that? Was it panic? Pure uncontrolled fear that overrode everything in the moment when the plan became real? Or had Jiang Jinlian been waiting for an exit long before that night? Waiting for a moment when the information that she held could actually be worth something? There's no way to know for certain, but what we do know is that she ran, and she told, and it didn't end up saving her. She was condemned along the 15 people that she betrayed, and the court gave her no mercy in the warning. Whether she expected any, the record doesn't say, but it does say that she died alongside them. And then there's Yang Jinying. The official interrogation documents lists her as a palace maid, again with no age, no province, and no distinguishing details of her background before this incident. But there's something that was preserved almost by accident in the margins of a record that really wasn't even about her. 咱们下说了吧，钱如死在书里, meaning let's do it. It's better than dying in his hands. Those were the words of encouragement, or perhaps desperation, depending on how you read them, spoken in the moments before 16 women committed what they knew was treason. Whether she said it to buck them up, or because someone was wavering, or simply because she needed to say it out loud for herself, we don't know. But those words are the most direct window that we have into that room before the attack even began. And she wasn't wrong. There was no version of that palace where these women survived by choosing any differently. The evidence for that is in the numbers that we have. 200 deaths, 50 consorts gone unnaturally. Jiang Jinlian warned the Empress and was executed anyway. Consort Duan, as you're about to see, who had nothing to do with the plot, was executed too. Participating would have killed you. Not participating would have killed you. There was nowhere for these women to turn. And now the night itself, October 1542. The emperor was asleep in the quarters of Consort Duan, his most favored consort, the woman whose rooms he had returned to more than any other. The night shift of palace maids came in as scheduled, 16 of them, and they did not begin their duties. What the records describe isn't chaos, it is absolute precision that was planned. One group held his arms, another group held his legs. Fabric was stuffed into his mouth so that he couldn't call out for help, and they drove their hairpins into his groin repeatedly. And then one of them produced a silk cord from one of the woman's own hair, looped it around his neck, and pulled tightly. He lost consciousness, and he was unconscious for 8 hours. But they had tied a dead knot. A dead knot won't tighten under any sustained tension the way that a slip knot will. It holds, and then it holds at exactly that tension, no further. Now, whether that was inexperience, 16 women working in the dark, under pressure, who had never done anything like this before, or whether someone in that room tied it wrong deliberately, unwilling at the final moment to be the person who had hands ending someone's life, no one has ever been able to say with certainty. The record names 16 perpetrators and one knot. It doesn't name who tied it, but that one knot is the only reason that Jiajing survived. Zhang Jinlian's warning brought Empress Feng to the scene, and when the Empress arrived, some of the maids were still on top of the Emperor, and she ordered them to be captured, commanded the eunuchs to revive him, which they struggled to do, and then, standing in the wreckage of an assassination attempt, with the court in chaos around her, she began making decisions, and she made them fairly quickly without any extended investigation. All 16 maids were condemned. Wang Ningping was named as the principal instigator, which, as we discussed earlier, may or may not have reflected exactly what had happened. Zhang Jinlian, who had run to warn the Empress, was condemned with the rest of them. The sentence for all 16 was lingqi, death by slow slicing, carried out publicly. Their families were punished alongside them, with some being executed and some being enslaved. And then Empress Feng turned towards the woman whose quarters the attack had actually taken place in, Consort Duan. She wasn't just a simple favorite. She was able to manage not the empire, but the man behind the empire. And Jiajing loved her openly, without any form of pretense, in a way that the record confirms was unlike anything else in his emotional life, which made her the woman that Empress Feng had watched Jiajing choose, day after day, for years, while Feng, his wife, his empress, had never once shared his bed. Consort Duan had been asleep elsewhere the night of the attack. She wasn't even in the same room when it began. Her quarters had been chosen by the maids precisely because Jiajing spent his nights there, not because she had invited the conspiracy. Empress Feng ruled that since the assault had taken place in Consort Duan's palace, she bore the responsibility for what happened within it. Consort Duan was sentenced to lingqi in the marketplace, alongside all of the 16 maids. So, was that justice? Or was Empress Feng standing in that moment with extraordinary power and the memory of every year that she had spent invisible inside of that palace, using the chaos of an assassination attempt to remove the woman the emperor had chosen instead of her? The Ming records preserved one line about this, but the consort truly did not know. Only after a long time did the emperor realize that she had been wrong. That's the official conclusion, arrived at after Jiajing recovered and investigated what had happened to him. He came to believe that Consort Duan had known nothing of this attack, that it had only taken place in her palace and her quarters purely by chance, and that Empress Feng had an opportunity in all of the confusion and put an end to Consort Duan's life. and he never forgave her for this. The paranoia that had always lived inside of Jiajing's head solidified after that coup, and it hardened into a new policy, a new protocol that was introduced for every palace woman chosen to spend the night with the emperor. She was stripped completely, wrapped in a sheet, and carried to his bedchamber. No clothing, no hairpins, no cord. Unwrapped at the threshold and presented to him with nothing that she didn't come into the world with. That ritual came directly from the memory of 16 women and their hairpins and silk cords. And it persisted for the next 370 years, through the rest of the Ming Dynasty and into the entire Qing Dynasty that followed. Every woman who crossed that threshold for nearly 4 centuries did so because of one night in 1542. And the ages of these girls kept dropping. In 1547, 5 years after the coup, he brought 300 new girls into the palace. The youngest were 11. In 1552, 200 more were brought in, with the minimum age lowered to 8. And then in 1555, 150 new girls below the age of 8 were brought into the palace. In December of 1547, a fire broke out in Renyin Palace, the Empress's residence, and a eunuch came to the emperor and asked whether or not she should be saved. And the emperor refused to answer. Empress Feng burned to death at 31 years old. In 1567, after 45 years on the throne, the Jiajing Emperor died, almost certainly from mercury poison, from the red lead, the elixirs, and a lifetime of slowly consuming what he believed would make him immortal. Lead, mercury, arsenic, to name a few. The immortality that he had taken so much from so many to reach had been killing him slowly the entire time. And here's the question that I want to leave you with, the one that I find myself so unable to resolve. The knot. 16 women planned that night with enough precision to coordinate positions, to bring the cord, to time their entry into that room. They had thought about this deeply. They had prepared for it. And yet, a dead knot. The one technical failure that determined the outcome of everything. Do you think that that was really an accident? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one, and this is genuinely a question that I go back and forth on. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the more you know.